During a recent event held by the National Association of Black Journalists, former President Donald Trump engaged in a contentious Q&A session. The exchange took place under the moderation of Harris Faulkner, a prominent figure known for her role on Outnumbered. The atmosphere was charged from the outset, reflecting the high stakes and intense scrutiny surrounding Trump's appearance. At the beginning of the event, Trump expressed frustration over a delay he experienced, saying, "I would love to move on. You are the one that held me up for 35 minutes." This remark set the tone for a tense interaction, highlighting Trump's irritation with the situation and his eagerness to proceed despite the interruptions. Mr. Trump expressed his dissatisfaction with the manner in which he was questioned, stating, "First of all, I have never been asked a question in such a horrible manner. The first question comes without any courtesy, such as a simple hello or how are you?" On Kamala Harris and her identity. When asked about Kamala Harris, Trump made a controversial remark. There's an implication that Kamala Harris only secured her position because she is a black woman. It's interesting to note that she identified as Indian at one point, but later transitioned to identifying more strongly as a black person. In response to a request for clarification, Trump further elaborated. "To be clear, I believe that these questions are being framed in a very hostile and confrontational manner. The questions and the way they are posed reflect a certain level of hostility and bias." Here is a revised and more detailed version of the content. "The situation sparked my initial involvement and underscored the importance of addressing it with national attention. This year, we have witnessed an impressive buildup involving these journalists, some of whom expressed discontent about Donald Trump's presence. There are others whose reactions we have yet to hear. What stood out to me was the palpable sense of healing experienced by the audience. It was evident that despite differing opinions, there was a moment of mutual understanding and respect facilitated by the candidates. This interaction exemplifies the core objective of journalism: to foster growth through listening and critical questioning, even when it involves engaging with individuals or topics one may not be familiar with. The essence of this gathering was not just about hearing familiar perspectives, but about the opportunity to question and explore new viewpoints. The goal was to broaden the scope of dialogue and understanding, highlighting the evolution of journalism towards a more inclusive and inquisitive approach. Many younger journalists I've spoken with expressed their satisfaction with his presence at the event. However, there are always challenges associated with such situations, like the one we experienced today. It can be difficult to fully support or applaud the event due to certain logistical and technical issues. For instance, the microphones were not functioning optimally, which led to significant technical difficulties. These issues contributed to delays and affected the public's perception of the performance. The technical problems encountered during the event played a substantial role in the disruption, which in turn influenced how the president's speech or performance was received by the audience. When interviewing politicians, it is common for them to evade or partially answer the questions posed. This phenomenon necessitates that journalists ask follow-up questions to ensure the core issues are addressed. Follow-ups are crucial for drilling down into specific topics and obtaining meaningful responses. During interviews, it's essential to explore a range of significant issues. For example, discussions on key topics such as immigration and its impact on Black communities can provide valuable insights. Politicians often present their views on these matters, but it is important to remember that perspectives within Black communities are diverse. Not all individuals or voters share the same viewpoints, and political preferences can vary widely. The representation of diverse opinions and backgrounds in journalism is vital. This diversity includes the perspectives of younger individuals aspiring to enter the field. It is encouraging to see younger people engaging in journalism and seeking to represent a broad spectrum of viewpoints, reflecting the variety within the communities they report on. In recent discussions, Donald Trump has garnered significant attention for his stance on border issues. This focus highlights the importance of addressing and scrutinizing policy positions on major topics. The attention given to Trump's views on immigration underscores the ongoing relevance of these issues in political discourse. In summary, effective journalism involves persistently seeking clear answers from politicians, exploring important and relevant topics, and embracing diverse perspectives. The role of journalists is not only to report, but also to ensure that a wide array of viewpoints is represented and considered in public discussions. Detailed analysis. Implications of potential nomination. If she becomes the Democratic nominee, the municipality may face significant challenges. This situation could provoke a strong reaction from Republicans more broadly and specifically from former President Donald Trump. Her nomination could be a flashpoint, leading to intensified partisan conflict and scrutiny. The potential backlash is not just a political risk, but also a strategic challenge, as it might affect the broader political climate and influence electoral dynamics. Strategic shift and legislative critique. In her strategy, she is aiming to redirect attention by emphasizing the lack of progress on certain legislative initiatives. She attributes this stagnation to Republican opposition, framing it as a barrier to achieving her policy goals. This approach serves to cast Republicans in a negative light and underscore her commitment to advancing legislation. However, this tactic invites scrutiny regarding her focus on specific issues. Notably, other pressing matters, such as border security, appear to be sidelined in her critique. This omission raises questions about her comprehensive approach to governance and whether her strategy effectively addresses all critical issues facing the country. Participation in National Association of Black Journalists event. Interestingly, it has been confirmed that she will now participate in the National Association of Black Journalists (NABJ) event. This decision deviates from the initial plans for the day, suggesting a strategic shift or a late decision to engage with this particular audience. Her participation in the NABJ event reflects a strategic move to connect with a key demographic and address relevant concerns directly. It indicates an effort to enhance her visibility and engage with influential voices within the journalism community. President Biden's willingness to debate. Additionally, President Biden has expressed his openness to debating her if she secures the Democratic nomination. This statement indicates a willingness to engage directly on policy issues and demonstrate contrasts between their approaches. Biden's readiness to debate highlights the importance of policy discussions in the nomination process and suggests that he is prepared to showcase differences in their political platforms. This openness to debate could influence voter perceptions and contribute to a clearer understanding of each candidate's stance on critical issues. In this discussion, we have two prominent figures taking center stage, and it's crucial to delve into their statements and the reactions they elicited from the audience. Martha opens the segment with enthusiasm, noting the significance of the situation. She proposes playing a montage of recent events to capture and analyze the reactions. The goal is to understand the crowd's varied responses, which seem to range from enthusiastic support to surprise at certain statements. The crowd's response was multifaceted. At times, it appeared they were cheering on the speaker, showing strong approval of his points. At other moments, their reactions indicated surprise or even confusion regarding his statements. This mix of reactions highlights the complexity of public opinion and the varied impact of the speaker's remarks. Mr. Trump presents his perspective on immigration and economic policy. He emphasizes the need for thorough vetting and background checks for individuals entering the country. His proposal aims to enhance national security and ensure that only vetted individuals are allowed entry. Trump further outlines his economic strategy, suggesting that implementing his policies would significantly reduce energy costs, interest rates, and inflation. His goal is to make everyday goods, such as a simple ham sandwich, affordable again for average Americans. He uses the example of restaurant affordability to illustrate the broader impact of his proposed policies on the cost of living. Martha's analysis seeks to evaluate the effectiveness of Trump's statements and proposals in the context of public reaction. Understanding these dynamics is essential for assessing the potential impact of his policies on both national security and the economy. I have a great deal of respect, and it's crucial that we address issues promptly. If there are delays or problems with your equipment, that reflects poorly on the process and can lead to uncomfortable situations. Regarding the question I was asked, I have already addressed it. I firmly believe that my presidency has been the most beneficial for the Black community since Abraham Lincoln's administration. We have two important sound bites to discuss. Let's begin with the second one, where he claims to have been the best president for the Black community since Abraham Lincoln. We also previously played a segment where he was questioned about Kamala Harris's racial background, whether she is Indian or Black. What are your thoughts on these issues? Let's start by discussing the order of the topics you provided. Regarding the former president's responses to questions, we both had the opportunity to interview him, which is always a fascinating experience. However, it's important to continue pressing for detailed answers. There was some contention regarding whether we would get a clear response to our questions. Specifically, I asked him about the pressures the Black community is facing due to rising prices and the policies in place to address these issues. I inquired about what strategies or messages he has for younger Black individuals who are struggling with the current economic climate. In his initial response, did he address these concerns adequately? Regarding your previous comments about the audience's reactions and the interaction dynamics, the atmosphere was somewhat confrontational at times. However, for the most part, the audience responded with laughter. This response highlighted a contrast from previous experiences, as there was a visible conduit for public engagement that isn't always present. The audience's familiarity with TV personalities didn't necessarily translate into a deep understanding of their policies. This indicates a gap between the public's perception and the actual policy substance. Looking ahead, a debate between Kamala Harris and President Trump would be particularly intriguing. Such a debate would offer a unique platform for exploring their differing viewpoints and policies, making it a highly anticipated event if and when it occurs. Martha, let's discuss the responses concerning J.D. Vance, especially in relation to the president's defense of his vice presidential pick today. During a recent event, one of the questioners, who identified herself as a single mother, raised concerns about J.D. Vance. She was particularly questioning whether the president is satisfied with Vance's performance and decisions. Can you elaborate on how this exchange played out and your thoughts on it? Follow-up response. I also followed up on this by asking the president about the ongoing discussions and criticisms surrounding J.D. Vance. There has been considerable chatter about Vance's early struggles and missteps, and many are questioning why he was chosen for this role. I sought clarification on two fronts. Firstly, the president's reaction to the criticisms of Vance's statements, including his comment about Diet Mountain Dew, which was initially intended as a joke. It's clear that people are still discussing and scrutinizing these issues, and it's important to understand how they impact the president's support for his pick. During a recent conversation, I inquired about the reasoning behind selecting J.D. Vance for a particular role. The individual explained that Vance was chosen due to his background. Vance, as a younger man, overcame significant challenges and worked his way through an Ivy League education, which the individual found admirable and indicative of his resilience and capability. However, I raised concerns about Vance's readiness for the position, especially given the gravity of the situation. A couple of weeks ago, just hours before a serious assassination attempt occurred, I had a discussion with the individual. I asked why J.D. Vance was selected, despite the dire warning I received just before the incident. The individual had expressed a prophetic concern that something bad could happen and emphasized the importance of making the right choice. I specifically asked whether J.D. Vance would be prepared to handle the responsibilities from day one. This question reflects a deep concern about whether Vance is adequately equipped to face immediate challenges and effectively manage the role from the outset. Despite the efforts to address the issue, the individual did not directly respond to my question. Instead, he navigated around the topic without providing a clear answer. Martha noted that there were challenges with communication during the exchange. Specifically, there were moments when the speaker had difficulty hearing the questions, which further complicated the situation. Thank you for joining us, Harris. It was a fascinating discussion, and it's always valuable to hear about your experiences and perspectives. We look forward to continuing the conversation and are excited about the upcoming opportunity to hear from Vice President Kamala Harris via Zoom. Introduction. The National Association of Black Journalists, NABJ, convention is a significant event, gathering influential media professionals and public figures. Donald Trump's appearance at this convention was notable as it provided a platform for him to engage with a diverse audience and address critical issues. Analyzing how Trump resonated with voters at this event involves examining his approach, the challenges he faced, and the broader implications of his engagement. Trump's approach at the NABJ convention. During the NABJ convention, Donald Trump faced a unique and challenging environment. The convention is known for its critical and sometimes confrontational atmosphere, especially when it involves political figures with contentious records. Trump's approach was multifaceted: deflection and evasion. Trump's responses often involved deflecting direct questions and avoiding straightforward answers. Instead of addressing questions head-on, he sometimes circumvented them, which can be seen as a strategic move to avoid contentious issues. Engagement with media. Trump's interaction with the media at the convention was marked by his characteristic combative style. His responses were designed to appeal to his base while attempting to sway undecided voters by highlighting his achievements and attacking his critics. Focus on key issues. Trump emphasized issues that he believed would resonate with the convention's audience, such as economic policies, job creation, and his administration's accomplishments. He aimed to present himself as a champion of economic growth and a strong leader on domestic issues. Challenges faced. Trump's appearance at the NABJ convention was not without its challenges. Communication barriers. There were reported difficulties in communication, including issues with hearing and understanding questions from the audience. This problem hindered the effectiveness of his responses and contributed to a perception of evasiveness. Skepticism from attendees. Many attendees were skeptical of Trump's motives and his ability to address issues relevant to the Black community. This skepticism was evident in the nature of the questions posed to him and the overall reception of his responses. Backlash and criticism. Trump faced backlash from some attendees who disapproved of his presence at the convention. This reaction included public criticism and protests from those who felt his participation was inappropriate or misleading. Resonance with voters. Despite the challenges, Trump managed to resonate with certain segments of the audience. Appeal to base. Trump's messaging continued to resonate with his core supporters. His emphasis on economic success and criticism of his political opponents played well with those who already supported him and were receptive to his narrative. Media exposure. His appearance at the NABJ convention garnered significant media coverage, which helped amplify his message. The exposure allowed him to reach a broader audience beyond the convention attendees. Contrast with opponents. By addressing the convention, Trump aimed to contrast himself with his political opponents, highlighting differences in policy and approach. This strategy was intended to reinforce his position as a distinct and strong alternative. Broader implications. Trump's engagement at the NABJ convention had broader implications. Public perception. His performance at the convention influenced public perception of his willingness to engage with diverse audiences and address challenging issues. The way he handled the questions and criticisms could impact voter opinions and campaign dynamics. Political strategy. Trump's appearance was part of a broader political strategy to reach out to different demographic groups and solidify support. The effectiveness of this strategy depends on how well he can address concerns and build rapport with various voter segments. Future engagements. The convention highlighted the need for Trump and other political figures to prepare thoroughly for engagements with critical and diverse audiences. The outcomes of such appearances can shape future campaign strategies and voter interactions. Conclusion. Donald Trump's appearance at the NABJ convention was a complex event marked by both strategic maneuvering and significant challenges. His approach involved deflecting direct questions and emphasizing his key achievements while facing skepticism and communication barriers. The impact of his appearance on voter sentiment and public perception reflects the ongoing dynamics of his political strategy and the challenges of engaging with diverse audiences. The event underscores the importance of effective communication and the need for political figures to navigate complex environments with skill and preparation. On Wednesday, former President Donald Trump engaged in a contentious exchange with ABC News correspondent Rachel Scott during a question-and-answer session at the Nabj convention. The session, intended to address important issues surrounding Trump's candidacy, quickly escalated into a heated confrontation. The central issue was Scott's question about why Black voters should trust Trump with another term, given his controversial statements and actions in the past. Trump's reaction to Scott's question was notably defensive and combative. He criticized the manner in which the question was posed, labeling it as disgraceful and nasty. Trump's response highlighted his dissatisfaction with both the content and the tone of the question, which he felt was unfairly aggressive. He expressed frustration that the session began with a question that he deemed hostile and mentioned that the session was already delayed by 35 minutes. Trump's irritation was compounded by his belief that Scott's approach did not adhere to what he considered proper journalistic etiquette, such as not starting with a cordial greeting. Trump's comments also extended to his perception of ABC News as a fake news network, reflecting his ongoing antagonism towards media outlets that he believes are biased against him. His broader complaints included logistical issues with the event, attributing the delay to technical problems, and a notable absence, Vice President Kamala Harris. Trump highlighted that Harris, his likely opponent, was not present at the convention, which he used to emphasize a perceived bias or unfairness in the event's scheduling. The Nabj leadership has faced criticism from several Black journalists regarding their decision to invite Trump. Critics argue that hosting Trump, given his history of inflammatory remarks and attacks on journalists of color, undermines the integrity of the convention. They question the appropriateness of providing a platform to a figure whose policies and rhetoric have been divisive, especially in the context of a conference dedicated to Black journalists and media professionals. In defense of their decision, Nabj organizers argued that interviewing a leading candidate for the White House is a valuable opportunity. They emphasized the importance of engaging with prominent political figures to facilitate informed discussions and hold them accountable. The organizers are also working with Harris's team to arrange a virtual or in-person interview for September, which could address concerns about her absence. Trump's appearance at the Nabj convention underscores the complexities and challenges of hosting controversial figures in spaces dedicated to specific communities. His clash with Scott not only reflects his contentious relationship with the media, but also highlights the broader tensions between political figures and journalists. The event has sparked a debate about the role of journalism in holding public figures accountable and the ethical considerations of providing a platform to individuals with a history of controversial or harmful rhetoric. The situation also raises questions about the effectiveness of such interviews in advancing public discourse. While Trump's presence at the Nabj convention was intended to stimulate discussion and provide insight into his policies and perspectives, the resulting conflict and backlash suggests that the execution of such events requires careful consideration of both logistical and ethical factors. In summary, the clash between former President Donald Trump and ABC News correspondent Rachel Scott at the Nabj convention highlights significant issues related to media relations, event management, and the responsibilities of journalism. Trump's reaction to the questioning, coupled with his complaints about the event's organization and the absence of Kamala Harris, reflects his broader frustrations with media scrutiny and political dynamics. The controversy surrounding the event emphasizes the need for thoughtful deliberation in managing interactions between political figures and journalists, particularly in contexts that are sensitive and charged with historical and social significance. Vice President Kamala Harris and her Democratic allies have recently adopted a new strategy to criticize Republicans by labeling Donald Trump and his running mate, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, as weird. This approach marks a shift in the political narrative and aims to capitalize on perceived eccentricities of their opponents. This analysis examines the implications of this strategy, its effectiveness, and the reactions it has elicited from both parties. The Democrats' strategy involves branding Trump and Vance as weird, a term used to cast them as outliers or unconventional in a manner that may not align with mainstream values. This characterization has been prominently applied to Vance's controversial remarks about abortion and his assertion that political leaders without biological children lack a direct stake in the country. By focusing on these comments, Democrats aim to create a narrative that questions the credibility and relatability of their opponents. The weird label has proven to be a potent tool for the Democrats, providing them with a narrative advantage that has been less prevalent in previous electoral cycles. Under President Joe Biden's campaign, Democrats struggled to gain traction in media narratives and voter perception. However, by framing Trump and Vance as weird, they have introduced a straightforward and memorable critique that resonates with their supporters and creates a contrast with their opponents. Impact on political discourse. The strategic use of the term weird has altered the political discourse. David Karpf, a strategic communication professor at George Washington University, commends the simplicity and effectiveness of this approach. He notes that concise, impactful messages like weird quickly capture attention and can lead to increased resonance among supporters. Additionally, such messages often provoke defensive reactions from opponents, which can further amplify the original critique. Karpf's observation highlights how labeling can influence the dynamics of political debate. By branding Trump and Vance as weird, the Democrats have managed to shift some of the focus away from their own policies and challenges, directing attention instead to the perceived oddities of their opponents. This tactic forces Trump and Vance to address and counter these criticisms, which can be challenging if they struggle to provide a compelling rebuttal. Republican response. Trump's campaign, known for its ability to shape political discussions through provocative statements, has found it difficult to effectively counter the weird narrative. Instead of successfully redirecting the conversation, the campaign has been engaged in a prolonged effort to highlight aspects of the Democrats they consider weird. This reaction indicates a level of frustration and an attempt to deflect attention, yet it has not managed to shift the narrative decisively. Strategic communication insight. David Karpf's analysis underscores the strategic value of using simple, evocative labels in political communication. The weird message is effective because it is easy to understand and recall, making it a powerful tool for shaping public perception. The challenge for Republicans, therefore, lies in addressing this narrative without falling into the trap of becoming defensive or providing further fodder for criticism. The term weird has been notably used by Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, a Democrat and a potential vice presidential candidate on Harris's short list. Walz's comment on MSNBC, where he described Trump and Vance as just weird, was further amplified by the Democratic Governors Association, which he chairs. This labeling strategy was reinforced through a subsequent post on X, formerly Twitter, and reiterated in Walz's appearance on CNN. His use of the term was partly a reaction to Trump's references to the fictional serial killer Hannibal Lecter, highlighting the perceived oddity of Trump's rhetoric. The Harris campaign has adopted a similar approach, notably in a news release titled Statement on a 78-Year-Old Criminal's Fox News Appearance, which included the phrase, "Trump is old and quite weird" in its takeaways. This use of weird aims to underscore Trump's perceived eccentricities and age-related concerns, framing him as out of touch and unfit for leadership. In the same vein, Harris's campaign has used the term weird to describe J.D. Vance. Multiple news releases highlighted Vance's positions on abortion and other issues as evidence of his weird ideas. Harris's campaign spokesperson emphasized that Vance had been making headlines for what was described as his out-of-touch, weird ideas. This strategic use of the term aims to discredit Vance by associating him with unconventional and controversial viewpoints. Harris's allies, including Senators Brian Schatz and Chris Murphy, have also contributed to this narrative. Schatz and Murphy posted a video on X criticizing Vance's past comments about limiting the political power of childless Americans, labeling these ideas as super weird. This alignment among Harris's supporters reinforces the characterization and amplifies its impact. In her first fundraiser as the likely Democratic nominee, Harris herself employed the term weird to describe some of Trump's statements. She criticized Trump's wild lies about her record and what he and his running mate were saying, labeling them as just plain weird. Harris's direct use of the term signifies its integration into her campaign's messaging strategy. Implications of the label 1. Psychological impact. The strategic use of weird serves to create a psychological distancing between Harris and her opponents. By labeling Trump and Vance as weird, Harris's campaign seeks to portray them as outliers, thereby reinforcing Harris's own position.